Oh hello everyone, this time let's think a little about what would happen if the Earth lost the Sun. It is not a complete fabrication that the Sun disappears. It is quite likely that a comet traveling through space will pass close to the Earth, and because of the gravitational force of that celestial body. The Earth is the one required out of the solar system. According to what experts have clarified in 2017, there are 100 billion planets. Wanderers in the Milky Way that, because they lost their star in the distant past, continue to float alone through the immense outer space. Today, I want to talk about what would happen to humanity and the Earth if the Sun were gone. But first, leave your like, subscribe to the channel not to miss videos like this. So what would happen if we lost the Sun before its time? What if the light on which humanity depends were to disappear for some reason? The situation would soon undergo a radical transformation. The Earth would fly off in some direction. The Moon would also come along, but we would no longer be able to see it in the sky, the reason being that it could no longer reflect the Sun's light. On the other hand, without the Sun, other planets would shine with a light that we had never seen before. Yet the whole Earth would be swallowed up into an endless darkness. It would be a darkness 300 times darker than a full moon night without clouds in the open countryside outside the cities. And there would also be chaos in various parts of the world, those who reside in warm countries because they cannot adapt to the low temperatures, and with an abrupt and sudden drop in temperature would begin to flee in large numbers, looking for places where it would be possible to endure the harsh winter. At first the power plants would operate normally, and then we would have electricity and could use heaters. It is predicted that in the first 3 days the average temperature would drop to as low as 0 degrees Celsius. For a while the temperature would not drop so rapidly, because the atmosphere and the seas would retain some of the heat. Some people predict that the average temperature of the Earth would drop from -17 to -20 degrees Celsius, while others speak of -3 degrees Celsius, a week after the Sun disappears. Because of their inability to photosynthesize, and also because of the drop in temperature, in 2 or 3 weeks the plants on the face of the Earth would be almost all extinct. The large trees would exist for a longer time, because they have stored an abundant amount of nutrients. From then on no more new oxygen would be produced for the atmosphere, but for various reasons, the remaining oxygen would be sufficient for some time. Even so, with extinction of plants in a second moment, humans and animals that consume oxygen would also become extinct, but still because there is plenty of oxygen in the atmosphere. Even if we consumed oxygen at the same rate as we do today, it would still last not for a few hundred years, but for 1,000 years. 1 year after the Sun's disappearance, those who calculate that the Earth's average temperature would drop to -70 degrees Celsius, while others say it would drop -40 degrees Celsius. So in the case of each developed country build shelters to rescue humanity like a Noah's Ark. Conditions in the first few months would be comparatively better. Of course, in this case, the assumption is that panic and turmoil will not interfere. And that people in developing countries do not use invasion in large numbers. The governments of many developed countries would become dysfunctional, and like an avalanche the chains of command would be destroyed. No one could really control a situation like this, just the sheer amount of people making it impossible to cope with such a rapidly changing situation. Of course, sooner or later it would not be possible to keep the power plants operational. In case we thought it would get colder and colder. So the regions to which it would be possible to immigrate would be those that generate geothermal energy. For example, in Iceland more than 80% of the households already use geothermal energy to heat themselves, and the positive points of geothermal energy are that it does not run out and that it is not affected by the surrounding environment, nor by the seasons and whether there is sun or not. In this way a large number of people would flee, searching for this geothermal energy, and the result would be a state of anarchy and chaos. Massacres and famine after 2 or 3 years of the Sun being gone. The average temperature of the Earth would reach -100 degrees Celsius. The seas would be covered by ice at least 10 meters thick. At this point, if we went outside without wearing protective clothing against the cold, such as spacesuits, we would die in a few minutes. Our lungs would freeze if we breathed even once. In short, in the first 12 to 16 months, if we did not stay in places where we could get warm enough, we would die. But once the temperature of the Earth drops so much, the speed of the drop becomes slower afterwards. But within 10 years, besides, the temperature would reach up to 125 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere would become so cold that its particles would condense and precipitate onto the Earth. Accumulating first would be in liquid form and then in solid form like snow accumulating. It is because of this that the atmosphere would gradually become thinner and thinner. In this way, it would also be impossible to go outside without suits adjusted to withstand the atmospheric pressure, such as spacesuits. Mankind would have to be concerned first with preparing oxygen generators. If this were not possible, it would be necessary to melt the solidified atmosphere that would accumulate around the Earth. In addition, it would also be necessary to prepare in advance some kind of equipment that could somehow generate electricity. Artificial light would also be needed, for an environment in which plants could perform photosynthesis. In the sea, the thick layer of ice would prevent the influences of the outside world very well, and the small living things that live in the depths of the sea without light or oxygen would survive longer thanks to the heat generated by the Earth. These living things are able to make heat the source of the energy they need. It would be 200 years after the disappearance of the Sun. The Earth would be frozen to a depth of several kilometers, but because the Earth's core would still be emitting heat beneath the thick layer of ice. Just as before, microorganisms and water would be in a liquid state without freezing. Even after billions of years had passed, they would still be exactly like this. Expert researching geoscience at the California Institute of Technology. He thinks that millions of years after the Sun's disappearance, the Earth's temperature would stabilize at minus 160 degrees Celsius. And thanks to this, the heat generated by the Earth's core and that released on its surface would equalize. The Earth would really be like a spaceship in which there would only be microorganisms and the slightly larger living things that live in the depths of the sea. However, nobody knows whether mankind would survive even after 100 years of the ground disappearing. And if the Sun were to suddenly disappear, much more difficult than a giant shelter completely self-sufficient operating according to the temperature drops indispensable for our survival would be built in a short period of time. However, if we can predict 5 years in advance that the Sun will disappear, the probability of humanity surviving multiplies. For example, even if humanity were to become extinct, and however small the probability after billions of years wandering around, perhaps the Earth will meet with a star similar to the Sun and begin to revolve around it. Then the ice in the oceans would melt and the surviving microorganisms would start a new natural selection. And they would perhaps evolve to the level of an intelligent life form. And that's all for today. The thought that the Sun might disappear gives us chills. Think about the Sun with affection. We also think about you, our viewers, with great affection. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to like and share our video. Until next time.